This is Andi Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, and I'm delighted to be joined by trainer Gary Lockett over Zoom. Gary, first and foremost, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
It's good to hear. Now, obviously, you've got a fighter on the second lot of fight camp shows starting this coming Friday. How is Nathan feeling? How are you guys feeling ahead of the bout with Chris Billam Smith?
Yeah, well, obviously it's a very tough match. You know, Chris is the form man. You know, he's had some really good fights the last couple of fights, and you know, we know it's a tough fight, but these opportunities are what you're in boxing for. And you know, Nathan's a very, very good fighter himself. He's just never been given the chance to show it, and he's 14-0, but for the last sort of 3 years, he's been treading water in these four and six rounders, and we just haven't really seen the best of him. And I think he's been bored. You know, he was a Commonwealth Games bronze medalist and a very talented, multi-titled amateur. But as I said, you know, he's just become a little bit bored as a pro, and he's needed something to sort of motivate him. And when we got this offer, I was actually talking to Eddie over in Texas when Jay Harris boxed Martinez, and Eddie offered me the fight then. And you know, obviously Nathan jumped at the chance, and you know, we're really looking forward to it.
Obviously, they was originally scheduled to face each other a few months ago, just before kind of a pandemic really struck and we went into lockdown. How frustrating kind of a period has this been for yourself and for Nathan in terms of trying to prepare for something that you didn't know when it would actually take place?
Yeah, it's always frustrating, isn't it? When you're unsure of proceedings, you know, what's going to go on. And of course, you know, it's not just us, is it? You know, we've all been in uncertain times. So I just think, you know, the professionality of the boxer, the professionalism has to come in, doesn't it? And, you know, he just has to keep taking over and keep concentrating. And that's what Nathan's done. He's kept himself in really good nick. You know, obviously when the gyms weren't open, you know, he was running every day and doing his own thing every day. But then when things sort of relaxed a little bit and we were able to sort of meet up, then he hit the ground running. It wasn't a case of sort of going from the street into a training camp. He was already fit. So we've been able to work on different things over the last sort of 10 weeks. And, you know, he's been able to improve rather than concentrating solely on fitness.
I know obviously he's done some work with Enzo and Maccarinelli, which we'll come on to in a little while, but just with regards to sparring partners, how have you found trying to get a certain level of sparring opposition in for Nathan to prepare for Chris, given that we was in lockdown and what have you?
Not so bad. The past sort of 4 weeks has not been too bad because we've had Enzo there, you know, once or twice a week, and Nathan's been going up to Watford as well. And my friend Mo Pryor has been kindly arranging sparring for Nathan up there. So I couldn't really tell you who he sparred with up there. There's a few names. Nathan would be able to tell you himself, but it was all good prep. But the main of the sparring has been done with Enzo, and you know, people might raise an eyebrow at that, and they might say, "Well, Enzo's 39, nearly 40." I tell you what, mate, you know, take no notice of that. You know, he keeps himself in superb condition, does Enzo, and he trains every morning at 9 o'clock. He trains like a Trojan. He's always in great shape, and look, it was very, very good sparring. And you know, it's like I said to Nathan on the way down. I said, you need to prepare for the hardest spar of your life, because even though Enzo's trying to help you, right, he isn't going to do it at the expense of getting beat up himself. You know, he's going to be in there bombing. So you need to be at your very best just to survive in there. And when we got there, I'd not seen the ring before. It was, I'm telling you now, it was probably at the very most 12 feet. You know, you're in the center of the ring, and obviously, you know, I think Enzo's the puncher out of the both of them, and you know, Nathan was throwing a jab, taking one step back, and he was on the ropes. So you know, it was a very, very good spar, and well, all of the spars were very good spars, and you know, there's nothing like sort of preparing for a very hard contest with the perfect sparring, and that's exactly what it was, the perfect sparring for a hard, tough contest. And I think obviously Chris is very strong on the inside. He wrestles quite a lot on the inside, and I think this has been good for Nathan in that respect as well, sparring with Enzo.
We'll come on to Enzo a little more in a little while, like I say, but just to stick with the fight this Friday, I'm sure you'd have seen a lot of Chris. He's been on a few previous Sky shows, so it wouldn't have been hard to get a hold of the footage to kind of look back over. But what do you expect from him come fight night? What are you preparing Nathan for against Chris?
Well, to be honest, we've kind of just concentrated on Nathan, really. Look, we're under no illusions. We know what a good fighter Chris Billam Smith is. I can remember him in the amateurs. And I think he's progressed from the amateurs. He's become an even better pro. Obviously, he's got a very good trainer in Shane McGuigan. He's a good all-rounder, isn't he? He can punch. His record says he's a big puncher. He's got a decent jab and good all-round skills as well. So we're under no illusions. We know what a good fighter he is. But I think the main thing for us is Nathan is very, very, very brilliant, very good jab, and very talented himself. So I think we've just concentrated on Nathan keeping his form and not losing concentration, just being 100% disciplined for 3 minutes of every round. And I think if he can do that for 3 minutes of every round, then he's a very tough man to beat.
We obviously just saw this past weekend, the first fight camp show some bouts in particular which kind of caught my eye, especially that headline bout. So when you consider the bout between Nathan and Chris, how do you expect their styles to kind of mix? Do you think they'll gel or clash? Do you think do they feel the pressure at all in Nathan's case to kind of live up to what we've just seen this past weekend?
I don't really know. Nathan seems really confident. And obviously Chris is going to be confident. He's got every right to be confident. He's the champion and he's coming off some very good performances. So I don't know. There was no, obviously Fabio Wardley, but that was over quite soon, wasn't it? But I can expect this being a good big man fight. Hopefully it's good for the fans, as some of the fights were the other night as well.
Obviously, from what you did see the other night, Gary, what did you make of kind of the card, especially that headline fight between Sam Eggington and Ted Cheeseman?
I thought it was really well put together, considering the times that we're in at the moment. There's a lot of, even though everyone's being tested, you've got everyone with masks on, or I say everyone's been tested, everyone's being cleared, otherwise they wouldn't be in the venue. So then still to have the masks on and the people cleaning the ring after every single bout, it seems a little bit of overkill, really, doesn't it? But I think it's only right. I think the British Boxing Board of Control are the best board of control in world boxing. They're the safest. They look after the fighters the best. So, if it takes what they're doing there on these shows to do that to get things back to normal, then so be it. But I thought it was really well put together. I thought the fights were all pretty good, weren't they? They were, well, at least they were well matched beforehand. I think Fabio Wardley ended that a lot sooner than what people thought he would. It was a very good performance from him. I think he stood out, didn't he? Dalton Smith looked really, really good as well. And also then the two main fights with James Tennyson and Gavin Gwynn and Sam Eggington and Ted Cheeseman, they were decent fights as well.
What was your thoughts on that headline fight between Sam Eggington and Ted Cheeseman?
To be honest, I'd taken the family away. We were stopping in a hotel room, so I was watching it on Sky Go on my phone. So, from what I saw of it on the small area, the phone, myself and my son were watching it. We were under the impression that Cheeseman had just nicked it. But if I watched it again, I might change my mind. But I just thought overall, I thought Cheeseman had the better of the first sort of 5 or 6 rounds, not by a long way. I thought Eggington came back into it, but then I thought Cheeseman finished strongly as well. So, but as I say, that's not a very confident vote because I was watching it on a screen about this big. So, no, that was good. And then obviously with the James Tennyson fight, I think Gavin was always going to struggle against James Tennyson because, if you look at the fight when Tennyson fought Craig Evans, Craig's got very good natural movement with his feet. He was able to sort of make Tennyson miss and knock up rounds, whereas with Gav, he's a come forward fighter himself. Okay, he's big for the weight, but I think he does lack that little bit of power, and I think that's why Tennyson was just able to get in his face and stay in his face without fear of any punches coming back. So he's a fearsome fighter, Tennyson, isn't he? And he can punch, and he's relentless with his pressure.
Just to pick that back up there, Gary. We touched on this past weekend, so just to come back to this show, we mentioned you're at fight camp. You've just kind of checked in. You spent a few hours now at the hotel. So just talking about kind of the procedures you've gone through this morning and how you expect the rest of this week to play out for yourself and Nathan.
Well, as I said, like the show the other night, Fight Camp 1, it was very well put together. And having come up here, we're stopping at the Fight Camp Hotel now in Brentford. And you can see how organised it is. Everything is, with Matchroom, everything just runs, perfectly. So we got up here. We were immediately met. We had to check in and then go straight for testing. Once tested, then the security guy then takes you up to your hotel room. So I feel like a child, being told what to do. So we can't come out of our hotel room now until the results. So results are not really likely to be before midnight. So we're looking at the morning now. But as I say, you got to get up here, you're shown where to go, what to do, where to park. And like I said earlier, if that's what it takes to get things back to normal, then so be it.
How are you looking to kind of try and take up your time?
I've got, as I said earlier, I've got a book, I've got my phone, and I've got the TV there. So I've been in worse places in my life, for longer periods of time. So I'm sure I'll be okay.
Just to move away from that fight, just get your thoughts on the headline fight there as well. Tyson-Jones versus Terry Harper. Just what are your thoughts on that one, Gary?
To be honest with you, I've not seen a lot of Terry Harper at all. I've seen a little bit of Natasha Jonas as a pro, and also I saw a little bit as an amateur. I think the form book's saying Terry Harper. I think from what I've seen, lots of people are saying Terry Harper, but it's something I couldn't really judge on because I've not really seen enough of either to judge. I'm sorry.
So that's all right. Obviously, another man I wanted to get just kind of an update on is Jay Harris. How is Jay doing?
He's very frustrated. He's chomping at the bit. MTK tried to get him on a bill, one of these bills that they're putting on in the next month, but it's an awkward weight at flyweight, and obviously it has to be a British opponent. So couldn't really find any ideal opponents. So I think Jay's going to have to wait till September, October time now. But that's no stopping. That's no holding him back. I think he's proved in his last fight that he belongs at world level. That guy's the number one in the division, and Jay gave him all he could handle and outboxed him for long periods. And even at the final bell, I don't think Martinez had quite figured Jay out. I always say the same. He looks like he looked like he'd blow away in a strong wind, doesn't he, Jay? But then you put him in the ring, and he's a ferocious little customer. So very proud of our journey together. Culminated in that world title shot. And I know he lost, but to us it was a win. Really, I know that sounds daft, but from the start, he hasn't had things easy, and with that performance, even though he lost, people stood up and sat up and took notice. And I think hopefully there's going to be good things come out of that now.
I mean, it's obviously very difficult to say how the coming months, or certainly maybe the next year or so, will play out for Jay because of the pandemic and what have you. But how does he kind of see himself manoeuvring towards another world title shot? Has he got a certain title in mind which he wants to kind of move towards?
Well, if it was me, I mean, obviously WBO was vacant. I think that's being fought for very soon, though. I mean, the IBF, the holder, the South African kid, he's getting on a little bit. So for me, I'd like to steer him towards the IBF. He has been IBF Intercontinental champion, so that's not undoable. But I think the way that we're planning it as a team, we've spoken over with MTK, and I think the way that we're planning it is that hopefully Jay goes in now to a maybe either an Intercontinental title fight or an 8-rounder, and then hopefully gets a shot straight away off the back of that performance, because as I say, everybody knows how good he is, and he's still going to be rated as well. So I'm really, really confident that Jay can be a world champion this year.
Gary, just to move away from your fighters, and just you mentioned Enzo obviously earlier on. When you are seeing him in the gym, we've seen him, kind of put some teaser tweets out that he has maybe been considering a little comeback for himself. When you do see him in the gym, do you see somebody who could make a return to the ring? And if so, what level do you feel he'd be able to operate at?
Yeah, listen, there's the old saying, isn't there? Sparring and fighting are two completely different things. And if Enzo's going to make a comeback, we have spoken over. He's not. He said in the past that he's not looking to go into any world title fights or anything like that. Of course, that's out of the question. He hasn't boxed for 4 years, but in my mind, Enzo needs to come back just against the right opponent. In a 6-rounder, and just see where things are. For me, at this moment in time, it's his 50th fight. I think he should have one more fight and leave it there. But I'm not Enzo, and if Enzo comes back and feels very happy with the way he performed, we just know that he's going to want one more. And that's obviously a difficult decision then for myself and for him. But he's not getting any younger. And the last time he boxed, it wasn't a great result. He got caught cold. So in that 4 years, he's not gonna got any better than that, if you understand, because he's aged 4 years as well. But in answer to your question, in the gym, he looks as good as ever. And that's why I said that it was a perfect sparring for Nathan, because Enzo was as good as what I saw 4 or 5 years ago.
What does, if Enzo was to come back, and obviously you've had discussions with him, what does he want to come back for? Is there anything? Is it just to have one more fight, just because he's watching everybody week in, week out, and he's got a bit of a desire back himself to get back in the ring? What is it that he wants to come back for?
Yeah, that's what you've got to understand. Like, I never loved boxing when I was a pro. I never loved boxing. Enzo is in love with the sport still. He loves fighting. He loves training. He loves everything about it. I don't think he ever misses a fight. So I think for Enzo, he's had 49 fights. I think he had 50 amateur fights, and I think he's had 49 pro. I think I've got that right. So I think he wants to have his 50th pro fight. And I don't think he's looking for a run or anything like that. He basically wants to have his 50th fight. So, as I said, though, knowing Enzo, if he performs well, he's going to say, "What do you think, coach? I look good then, didn't I? Perhaps, what about a 51st?" So, yeah, that's just the way Enzo is.
Obviously, one of Enzo's previous opponents, Roy Jones Jr., he's actually returning to the ring. He'll be facing Mike Tyson later this year. Gary, just what are your thoughts on that?
I haven't really got any thoughts, really. I've got nothing really good to offer about that. I don't think there can be any good come out of a fight like that. I mean, if you look at Mike Tyson, the last time he fought, he got stopped by Kevin McBride. No disrespect to Kevin McBride. And I think that was 14, 15 years ago, something like that. Let's say it was 12 or 8, or whatever it was. I think it was about 14, 15 years ago. He hasn't got any better since then, and everybody, all these sort of not wannabes, all the sort of guys who just don't really understand boxing, basically say he looks better than ever. Well, I could make you look brilliant on the pants. I could make anybody look brilliant on the pants. And Mike Tyson is an explosive, aggressive fighter. So, when he starts letting his shots go, whether he be 20 or whether he be 50, he's going to look impressive. But when he gets in the ring with someone hitting him back and someone avoiding the shots, it's going to be a completely different thing. But then Roy Jones, for instance, he was way past his best a long time ago as well. And with Roy, it's very sad for me to watch, because I saw him as a 19-year-old win Olympic silver, Rob Blind in the final. And then I was obviously in the corner with Enzo when Enzo KO'd him in Moscow. It was quite sad to see, because he looked old then. And that's near 5 years ago. So again, it's like I keep saying, they're not going to have got any better since then, because they've aged. So it's not really a nice thing. And will I be watching? Certainly not.
Gary, you obviously just, as we've touched on it, you mentioned it, obviously the Enzo and the Roy fight. Something I've always kind of wanted to go back over with either yourself or Enzo. Just what are your memories of that night? What did that mean for yourself and for Enzo?
Well, to be honest, it was a great trip. You know, we had such a laugh. Just so many incidents, and obviously, you know, Roy is a living legend. You know, a multiple weight world champion, and I think Frank Warren managed to sort of talk them into the fight by offering the slight lie that Enzo was completely shot, and they accepted it because I think originally it was supposed to be for the WBA regular, but then they had a press conference and then the WBA immediately refused to sanction it. I think at that point, the promoter basically should have said, well, look, if it's not for a world title, it doesn't need to be Enzo because Enzo's far too dangerous for your debut on Russian soil. But they stuck with Enzo, and I think it was the biggest mistake they ever did. And, you know, in 4 rounds, and he was out of there. And but great memories.
Obviously, we've heard some of the stories of what you guys kind of had to put up with throughout that week. Do you want to just share them for everybody who will listen in?
Well, I'll give you a basic outline because I think if Enzo writes a book, I think he wants to put it in the book. He wants to put the full, no hold barred version in there. I mean, look, obviously, there were Hell's Angels involved in the running of this event, and suffice to say, they weren't pleased, and they wondered why this had happened because it was all set up for it was all set up for Roy to win impressively and earn those guys perhaps quite a bit of money. And suffice to say, it didn't go to plan, and we had a little bit of trouble after. There were a couple of guys taken away. We didn't know if they were coming back. One of them wasn't me, thank goodness. But no, it was all okay in the end. And we got back to the hotel and we had a little bit of a party. And that's all I'll really say on the matter because I don't really want to give the game away. I think Enzo tells it a little bit more graphic than me, but we can laugh about it now. But at the time, it was quite a scary situation, you know.
I can imagine so. But Gary, obviously, I appreciate your time today. I'm sure you'll be. I say you'll be thankful. I'm thankful for giving up some time. But hopefully, I've been able to take up a bit of your boredom that you may have from just obviously waiting for your results to come back and what have you. Best of luck with kind of the rest of this week and obviously fight night. And I'll speak to you soon. Thank you for speaking to Boxing Social.
Hey, top man, a pleasure.